George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Demont Pope is in the house. Author, speaker, motivational speaker, speaks all over the country, helping people transform. Or as he did in the presentation this week at the Building Men program, he helped folks to land the plane. The theme of this conference that I met Demont at was called Landing in Your Future. And so he was the closer for that. And Demont, welcome to Inspiration for the Nation. So glad that we have the opportunity to catch up with you live from the ATL. where Syracusans are very familiar with the ATL because half of us live there now. So anyway, good to see you, brother. You got a couple of books out. Tell me some of the names of your books.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be on the platform with you, George. The book that I have out now is titled Purpose Over Pointless Excuses. The second book is currently underway. It's not officially out yet, and it's going to be followed by part 2 of the Purpose Over Pointless Excuses book. So there will be 3 coming your way real soon. One is available right now, which is, as you see in the back there, Purpose Over Pointless Excuses.
Let's talk about that. All right. So what is pointless? What are the pointless excuses that you had to find purpose in? Let's go right to it.
Let's jump right into it, man. Some of the pointless excuses I had to find purpose in were things like insecurity, right? Identity crisis, right? Obstacles like that coming up from the way I grew up in a broken home, dysfunctional family. Like a lot of times we think that those are excuses for us to be average, or we think that those are excuses for us to operate below our full potential, right? We think that those are excuses for us to be occupying the position of a follower as opposed to walking into the position of leadership for those of us who are called and blessed to be gifted with leadership qualities, which in my opinion, I think everybody has leadership abilities. We just have to figure out which lane and which area we are to lead in. But see, I thought all of those adverse and obstacles and adverse experiences, George, I thought those were reasons or excuses, right? At one point in my life, like most people. But I came into a point, George, where I realized that I had to put purpose over those pointless excuses if I wanted to make a difference in my situation.
So you had to go through some things, right? Yeah. And you had to navigate some things. What are the things that you had to navigate for yourself to come to this place of purpose where you can now pour in to the lives of young people? Because I know just from watching you that is a passion, right? For you, but you said you want the ones that nobody else wants. Yeah. You want the ones that the teachers can't deal with. Those are the ones you want. Why is that important for you, and how did you come to that place in your own life? What did you have to come through?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, George. You are right. That's exactly what I said, and I stand behind that because I mean that. I want those students, right? That 5% that the educators are spending 95% of their time trying to deal with, right? Like I got time for them, and it's a special place because I used to be one of those kids, right? I used to be one of those kids because of the identity crisis, because of me not knowing who I was, because of the lack of presence of my biological father in my life, right? You know, it's tough for brown colored boys growing up without the presence of their fathers in their life. So I didn't really know who I was or how to become that, right? So I had to go through a series of obstacles trying to fit in here and there. And I found myself, George, doing things and congregating around people that I had no business associating with. And I partake in some things that I had no business partaking in. So I realized that I wasn't meant. I tell you what, here it is. I realized that I was a star, George, and my light was being dimmed because I was trying to fit into other people's circle of approval. So I'm passionate about these kids who we call at-risk youth, right? The at-risk students and young adult students, right? I'm passionate about them because I was that at-risk student, right? So it took some educators, right, that went over and beyond their scope of job duties, right? It took mentors, coaches, right? People in ministry to really sow seed in me, take time, put effort in me. And the least I can do is honor those people, right? Those that made sacrifices for me to pull me out of what I was in. The least I can do is use my experience, right? And go back and pull some more young people out of that very same place that I used to be stuck in.
I always ask this to folks like yourself who were stuck in situations in your life. What is it that somebody could have said to you then that you're saying to somebody now? In other words, right? Because you knew you are a star that was then because of the circle you was running in and doing the things that you shouldn't have been doing. At least that's that from your words, okay?
Right.
So how do we prevent you or the folks like you at that time? What could somebody have told you that would have snapped for you to get out of that circle that was dimming your light? Because my suspicion, this is my suspicion, I don't know for a fact, my suspicion is that we're longing for something and we'll go wherever we get that, even if that ain't necessarily good for us, but it feels good in the moment. That's my interpretation.
Listen, George, you hit the nail right on the head, as they say. In full transparency, right? I was searching for something. And a lot of the students, a lot of the young people, and you got some adults right now too, that are still looking and searching for something. Right. And it was that love. It was that belonging. It was that feeling of acceptance. Right. Because I was battling with the rejection and the abandonment. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what somebody could have spoken to me, the words that could have made me pause and start thinking more about my actions were the fact that it's okay for me to not be okay, as you stated to the students yesterday at the conference when we stayed over, right, for that extra portion, that extra pouring into, right? I'm going to feed those words right back to you. Had somebody said that to me, right, had somebody told me that it was okay, right, to feel lost. It was okay to feel afraid. It was okay to not know who I was or what I wanted to be at an early age in life. Had someone told me that the journey, right, was a marathon and not a race. Had someone told me, right, that it would be okay if, right, all I had to do was hold my position, right? Find who I was by attaching to mentors, right? By attaching to somebody who was doing what I wanted to do. All they had to do was tell me that it was okay for me to feel the way I was feeling, George.
You know, Demont, you said something that I don't often hear brothers talk about, and I'm glad you did. You talked about, I felt rejection, but this other word, abandonment. We're not talking about that enough, because this is, I think, a real key. There's a brother that we had on one of the major companies here, and he talked about his father did major time, FBI was looking for him, penitentiary or whatever, and he didn't have the connection. He what did he say? Emotional abandonment and physical abandonment as well. He felt because his father wasn't there. He was there for a minute, but then he was also on the run, right? Yeah. So this notion of us really going deep into the souls of young boys who feel just as you felt and helping to connect that, man, that's, to me, there's something there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly, George. And see, here's the thing. When you said emotional abandonment and physical abandonment. See, the thing is, the reason why we don't talk about it so much is because we are afraid of the word vulnerability, right? We are afraid to open up that door. Why? Because we feel like if we show who we really are, we won't be upholding this so-called statistical image or false notion of manhood or strength. We feel like those of us who are strong men, we feel like if we let somebody know that we felt abandoned, if we let somebody know that we're offended or we're hurt, right? We translate that hurt, right, from that abandonment, from that rejection, we translate it into anger. Therefore, it comes out, right, in a way of lashing out, right, in a way of hurting people, right? To make it, break it down into simplicity, right? I'm gonna break it down like a fraction. Hurt people hurt people. So because we won't acknowledge the fact that we're hurt, George, we can't begin the process of healing because we won't even admit to ourselves, right? Therefore, we won't go do what we need to do, right? Such as therapy, right? Working on our mental health. We'll work out. We'll work on our diet, right? Physically. But we won't do much about our mental health, George, because we are afraid to talk about the fact that we've been lost, confused, rejected, abandoned, abused, right? It's hard.
And so given that, and you talked about this vulnerability, this piece, we wear the mask. So what it looks like then is I can't show you how I'm really feeling, because then this is where I want to really hone in on, right? Because I have to show you the mask, because if I show you who I really am, then in some spaces I'm putting my life at risk, because then I'm appearing weak, where I have to wear the mask and walk around and feel a certain way, because it's not safe for me to show who I really am in these circumstances. So I gotta wear the mask, and I gotta show you, and I gotta prove my manhood and my masculinity, because I can't show you who I really am. Can we ever get to a place, Demont, where in the communities where we live, that we can actually be authentically ourselves without having to mask up? Because not to mask up is not safe for us. Can we actually do that? In what ways can we do that? Because I fear that to survive, I got to put it on. Because if I don't put it on, I might not get home that night.
Man, listen, that's a heavy loaded question. But
there's a lot there.
That's a heavy loaded question, but come on with it. This, because we're gonna help somebody here. That's what we're here for. Like, what are we doing here? Right. So here's the thing. Yes, I do believe that we can get to that place. But is it gonna be? I believe we can get there. Yeah. I believe we can get there, right? Let's put that on record. I do believe that we as a people can get there, right? But is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be overnight? No. Is it going to be in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? No. It's going to take a long process, because it took generational conditioning, generational, right, institutionalization to get us to where we are, George. So specifically, those of us who come from the community where we have to put that mask on, because walking down the street, if you don't look as if you can defend yourself, or if you don't have a sudden tough guy image, then guess what? You could become prey, right? Yeah. Because there are some in our community looking to prey on the weak, right? So I believe
as, right? Perceived as, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Perceived as the weak, right?
Yeah.
So I believe we can get to a place, right? Once we get to a place to where we first start loving ourselves, right? We got to teach each other, right? Who we have to value. You know what it is? I hear it. I got it right here for you. In my opinion, the most valuable resource, George, is human resource. And see, we don't know the value of the human resource, because we think that all of the other resources, right, are more valuable or important. But if we connected and tied into the official source, to the source, then we would know that all of the resources are ours in abundance, right? So we don't put the right value on human resource. And it's because when we look at one another, it's a threat to one another, as opposed to saying, hey, this is my brother. Like, we're in conditions where we don't choose to be in, but what if we work together? What if we stood on each other's shoulders and pulled one another up when we got out, as opposed to pulling each other down? That's why I tell people every day, like we don't have to hold it down no more, because gravity and negativity does the same thing. That's why I'm always telling people to hold it up, George, because if we hold each other up, then guess what? We can build each other up. The reason why we can't build each other up in our community, George, is because we spend too much time breaking each other down. Now, if we actually get active with actively educating ourselves, right? Getting familiar with our true history, our true heritage, right? The love that we come from, the compassion that we come from, the gifts, the talents, the abilities. Come on, George, you know what I'm talking about. This is how we can make this happen, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take some hard days. It's going to take some crying. We're going to have to unlearn some things that we've learned, George, and we're going to have to become new in order for us to do the things that we need to do to get to the place where we need to be.
So you mentioned it earlier, but how did you become new? When did it click for you that you had to I'm going to go with this. When did you have to when did you have to become baptized? When did you have to be, born again? Okay. To be who Demont Pope is today?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Again, you got these questions firing off. I think you prepared for this, big brother. So for me, again, it was a process. It was a series of steps. And the first step it had to come down to self-realization, right? Self-awareness. I had to become aware of myself, of where I was and why I was there. And then I realized it ain't nobody's fault. right? Once you become to a certain level of understanding or a certain level of age, right? When I was a child, I spoke and I understood as a child, but when I became a man, George, I put away those childish things, right? So what I did, I realized when I became an adult, I had to stop making excuses about my father not being in my life. Like he ain't coming back. So me being a father now, what am I supposed to tell my 5 children that I'm not capable of being their father because I'm still waiting for their grandfather who will never come back? So I had to become aware that I was in control now, right? At one point, there was nothing I can do. It was uncontrollable. But then I realized the things that I can control, such as my actions, right? Such as my peer group. I had to change my peer group, George. Right? I had to literally stop hanging around the people that were in the same condition 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row. Like if you're still in the same place you're in that you were in 5 years ago, then there's no progress. There's no growth.
But Demont, no, I'm sorry, but let me just say this. It's easier said than done.
Oh, that's absolutely. That's
okay. Like you can talk about it now in retrospect, that this is what I had to do to change my life. I had to change my circumstance and change the people. Mm-hmm. But on that journey, right? Come on now, tell the truth about it.
Yes, sir.
You ain't just walk up one day and said, I Pookie and them, I'm out. You ain't say that. You ain't. There was some,
process.
You probably was doing this for a minute.
Yeah, double Dutch, in and out.
Right.
Yeah. And the reason for that is because it's familiar.
Yes.
So you start you know what I'm saying? So I love how this is flowing and you pulling stuff out because it's familiarity when you're in a place you ain't never been before, right? I tell people all the time, in order to get where you've never gone before, you got to do something you've never done before, right? So when you start doing that, George, it's brand new and it's scary and it's lonely. Right? The waves, the wind is blowing. You jump out there on that boat. You call yourself walking on that water. And then you realize those waves are rising up higher than you are. And then you run back to what's familiar. You like, wait a minute. That fear starts taking over. Right? Yeah. And then you start knowing, okay, well, every time my response system, right? My automatic response system responds this way. So, okay, let me go back to what I used to do because this is what used to calm me down. Like this is what used to work for me, right? I'm afraid out here when it's bright outside, everybody can see the dirt, right? They can see that I'm not really who I said I was. So guess what? It's hard. You're going to play double dutch sometime, but guess what? It's progress. It's a slow process. As you double dutching, you just got to keep remembering to move forward. You got to keep remembering to move forward, and it is not going to be easy. I can't lie to them. It ain't.
Right. This is why I want to speak to that, because here's what I want people to know. Mm-hmm. Because on the journey of when you're transitioning to who you want to be or who you are claiming for yourself, mm-hmm. that there is going to be that. And I want people to know not to fear that, that to understand that that's part of what it may take for you to get to where you want to be, and not to beat yourself up, because some people aren't able to recover on the yo-yo. They're not. They get caught up and then they get caught back and they never get where they want to go. Yeah. So I just wanted you to acknowledge that as you got to this place, you know, it was bumps.
Oh yeah, man. It was bumps. It was like we talked about yesterday. It was a lot of turbulence, man. It was a whole lot of turbulence. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I think for people, I mean, you look, Demont comes to us with some what do you call it? You got some mileage, right?
Yeah. I got some mileage. I got some miles on me. I got some miles. Yeah.
You know, you've been around some things, so you're not theoretical in this conversation. That's what I'm trying to tell folk.
Yeah. We're talking about facts. And see, here's the thing. Now we're talking about something that I spoke on at the conference, George. We talking about experience. Right. Now, see, that experience came from the execution, right? I had to get to the point to where I realized it was okay to fail. Right. And I realized that my greatest success, just like some of the greats who we talk about today, it comes from the failure, because without the failure, without the missteps and the mistakes, George, you're not gaining any wisdom. Like if you've never lost a game, you're not a champion. That's what I always tell people. You're not a champion if you've never known defeat. You're a winner, true indeed. you're a winner, right? Phenomenal winner. But unless you've been tested, right, you don't really know what you're really capable of. Unless you've been put in some rough conditions, unless, oh my goodness, unless you've been hit with some diverse trials or temptations, you don't know what you will do or won't do. So it's the defeat, right? It's the getting up after defeat that makes you a champion. So the execution gave me the experience, but the experience gave me the exposure. That's those 3 E's I was talking about, right? It gave me the exposure because guess what? It exposed my weaknesses and it exposed my strengths. Now, we love when our strengths get exposed, but we try to run, duck, and hide when those weaknesses get exposed. That's why we play the double dutch. That's why we jump back out. Uh-oh, I'm strong. Oh, man, but I wasn't as strong as I thought I was. Let me hide right quick, right? So that experience is what it is, man. So in order to get that experience, you got to fall down to know that it hurts, right? And you got to get back up to know you can.
What did you have to overcome? What was your weakness?
Fear. Fear. You see how quick I was able to say that? Fear. And it's not something that just goes away, right? And never comes back. Like, I got to wrestle and fight and battle and defeat this thing constantly. Why? Because at one point it had a great hold on me for a lot of years, right? Not just in my childhood, but up until my adulthood. I had to realize, like, wait a minute, I can't keep being afraid, right? Afraid of what? Afraid of failure, afraid of going back. Like, it's one of the worst things in the world, George, I believe, is coming from nothing, then having reached something, and then going back to nothing.
So you was in the streets, bottom line.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So because when people say going back, just want to put that a reference going back to the street, right? Yeah. My foot was planted. Like, let's talk about that double dutch. I got one foot being raised and growing up in the church, but we growing up in poverty, broken home, right? Insecurity, passiveness, we struggling, we broke all the time. My mama need money. She got disabilities, she can't work. So guess what? I became a drug dealer, George. I became a gang member, George. I was stuck in that type of lifestyle, right? Like I've experienced some things that most people won't bounce back from, right? And I stand here today, George, because it's only by grace. And it's only by a whole lot of work, right? A whole lot of mentoring coaches, like a real life transformation. So when we talk about transformation, in order for a person to be able to operate in the ability to transform someone else's lives, they had to go through a massive transformation. Like, people, like, they want to get on the stage, George. Like, everybody want to get on the big stage with the big lights and the microphone and the thousands of people in the stands, but not many people want to put their hands to work and build the stage, right? Not many people want to build the table. They just want to come with their plate when it's time to eat. Man, I'm talking to Demont Pope, motivational speaker, author. The name of the book?
Purpose Over Pointless Excuses.
I knew it was the P's, Purpose Over Pointless Excuses. So you do a lot of speaking in schools all over the country. And what are you hearing? And I always like to ask people who work with youth, what are the things that you're hearing from young people that they say that they're not getting right now? What are you hearing from them?
Understanding. Without a doubt, every school I go to, at least one kid always say, nobody understands me, right? Nobody understands me, right? And it could be because they haven't, and most times because I specialize in dealing with the at-risk, right, youth and young adults.
Right.
So they're in school, they're in school suspension, and they're being suspended, they're being in detention, right? They're getting referrals because they feel like don't nobody understand them. You know why, George? Because they always lead off with the wrong question. They always ask them, what's wrong with you? Like, what's wrong with you? Why you always doing this? Why you always doing that? Why you always into something? When the question that they should be asking is, what happened to you?
What happened?
Like, what happened to you? What adverse childhood experiences did you encounter, right, that made you feel like the adults in this building, right? Come on.
Do they answer that question? Because I think, this is my perception, okay, that they're not going to answer that question right away.
Not right away. Absolutely not.
Okay, right.
Absolutely not.
There's got to be some relationship building before they'll even answer that question. But they will start. But like you said, that they told you that, you must have done something in that space to get that young man to say that to you, and then you can answer back what happened to you, right?
Yeah.
Because that's my thinking, is that we have to be in relationship in order to hear from these young people. Talk to me.
Listen, George. And when I facilitate professional development trainings and workshops, the main thing I tell the educators is this: before you can teach the mind of a student, you got to reach the heart of a student.
Ooh.
And I'm gonna say it again for him, George. Before you can teach the mind of a student, you got to reach the heart of a student. And the only way to do that, there's only one way to do that, and that's to be relatable, right? Relate, that's the root word in relationship. The first building block, the first step to take in building a relationship with at-risk youth and young adult students is to be fully transparent, right? Be vulnerable. Right? Because right now, students need to know that, hey, I'm not much different than you. I'm in this position because I did these steps and that step, but there once was a time where I was sitting in a very similar position as you, right? And I wasn't making real good decisions. See, it's difficult when you're standing in a position of always being right? So it's hard for the student to look at you because they always got to look up to you. I think they miss that. It's hard for the students to look at you because they feel like they always have to look up to you because you're so big. But when they realize that you, didn't go to all your classes too before, when they realize that you haven't always said polite and nice words, right? When they realize that you may have been picked on or bullied, or you may have not completed a homework assignment or said your dog ate it, right? When they see that you've done some of the same foolish things that they're doing right now, then they'll realize, wait, the teacher, the principal, the counselor, the educator, the mentor, the facilitator in the nonprofit organization, wait, they're human. Because they really don't believe, George, that teachers and educators and people in position of leadership like you and I, they don't believe that we're human. Like, they don't believe we go to the grocery store. They don't believe that we go shopping. They just think we just jump out and just be perfect, bro.
You got a lot of energy, but and I love it. I you know what? I'm interested in how you took all that pain, hurt, rejection, and fear to be who Demont is today.
I realized, George, I had no other choice. I realized that as I looked through my family, as I looked through my conditions, I realized that if anything was going to change, it was going to have to change with me. Like, I couldn't wait. Nobody was coming to knock on the door with a rescue care package, right? To put me and my family in a different trajectory, right? I realized it was on my back. It was on my shoulder. I took responsibility. Then I took accountability. That's what led me to the execution that gave me the experience, that gave me the exposure, that put me in this very position that I'm in today.
Let's go. All right. So, Demont, let's help some people right now. Mm-hmm. Let's change some minds. Let's give somebody something that they could use right now. What we gonna do for them?
Listen. Right now, you who are listening right now, I know it's tough. I know you feel isolated, but let me tell you something. Isolation, right? Isolation is the enemy. Isolation is the enemy to progression, right? The worst thing you can do is get yourself isolated by yourself, because in that place, there's nobody to hold you accountable, right? The purpose for me having mentors, like I got several mentors, is because I need somebody to see what I can't see. So those of you who feel isolated, right, physically and emotionally, first thing I need you to do is get around somebody, not just anybody, but you need to get around somebody who is whole, somebody who is healthy mentally, right? Somebody who has overcome that very thing that you're challenged with right now. Because here's the thing, you may think that you're the only one. You may think that no one understands you. You may think that you're the only one who has encountered such a thing, but I'm here to tell you that all you have to do is open your mouth, right, and ask. Right? The key word is ask somebody for help. Ask somebody for guidance, right? Because what you don't know is that it was the pain, right? It was the pain that propelled me to my position of purpose. See, it was the pain, the suffering, the struggles that gave me the PhD. I got a PhD in insecurity. See, I got a master's degree, right, in rejection and abandonment. Why? Because it takes somebody that has gone through it to be able to meet you where you are and bring you out of it and get you to what you are meant to be. I need you to know that there's purpose on the inside of you. I need to know that there is something greater on the inside of you than what's going on the outside of you. I need you to know that all you got to do is tap into that purpose, right? Tap into that reason for you being here, those gifts, those talents, right? Those things that make you feel good when you do it, because can't nobody do it like you when you do it. Yeah, I need you to know that's not by accident and it's not by incident. And I need you to know that your big brother, Demont Pope, wants you to know that purpose looks good on you. And it's okay to not know, and it's okay to not be okay. But guess what? Purpose over pointless excuses will get you to your next destination. And I decree a thing right now over your life. I decree blessings. I decree abundance and prosperity. I decree that you will walk in your true potential, that you will become the father you never had, the mother you never had, right? You will become, right, that entrepreneur, that business owner, that successful graduate, right? You will be the first person in your family to open that business. I speak life and I speak purpose to you. Why? Because purpose looks good on you. Yeah.
Amen. And Demont forgot to mention with all of that, he's a church kid too.
In case they didn't know, George,
okay.
in case they didn't know.
You heard the brother preaching. Demont, how they find you on social media?
Listen, everything is at Demont Pope on all social media. Website is demontpope.com. Very simple, Demont Pope, just like that.
And you ready to come to their community to do what you do?
Oh, most definitely. I don't care where you at. If the phone ring, if the email comes in, George, you better let them know I'm on the way.
Demont Pope celebrating people we feel good about, inspiration for the nation. So glad for you to stop by and chat with us for a minute. Inspiration for the nation. Pleasure, brother. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, my brother.
I really appreciate you stopping by with us for a minute. Inspiration for the nation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.